Alright, so I was going to try to do a tutorial on how to make a flower spray like this to layer on top of an initial. And I'll just go ahead and say, first of all, this is not a tutorial for someone who's just starting Inkscape. This is, I wouldn't say it's advanced, it's all pretty easy stuff. But if you've never done, if you've never traced a bitmap, or if you're not really comfortable with tracing bitmaps, if you haven't done used difference, and if you're not familiar with how to do an offset, then this is not going to be a tutorial that's going to help you very much. I mean, you could go ahead and watch it and, store it away for future use, but you really need to go and do some beginner tutorials first, like probably Troy's Inkscape challenges, and just look up a couple of practice a couple of techniques first before you jump into something that's this complicated. Now you might use a simplified version of this to do something not quite as complex, but anyway, I'm just going to show you how I would assemble something like this. So I've got a file where I went on Google and the internet and picked out some floral images that I thought would look nice, and these are all the same ones I used in the one I just showed you. And I just saved them to my computer and then imported them in to Inkscape, and here's an A. So that's just a Samantha font. It's one of the alternate glyphs for A. So I haven't traced any of these yet, and that would be the first thing to do. Let me go ahead and close that window. So we'll start with this, and for this I searched, I think, laurel branch. Um, so path, trace bitmap. This one's just a simple black and white image, so I'm going to do brightness cutoff. I'll leave the threshold at 0.45 and update. And again, this isn't a tracing tutorial, so if you don't know how to trace, you're going to go want to watch some videos on that. So that's my original image. I can delete it there, and we'll go ahead and change that to green just to be ready. I'll just go ahead and do the things that are black and white. I'm just going to use the same, I'm going to make it a little bigger first. I'll use the same trace for that. And there's that guy. I can delete the original. Now on this one you can see if I zoom in and double click on it to show the nodes, there's a couple of stray nodes up here where the image that I traced wasn't clean. So I'll get rid of that. I could go in if I wanted to, and this didn't really trace very well, so I can just get rid of little stray bits and clean it up just as you typically do when you trace something. Okay, so let's go ahead and change that to the same color green as the laurel. So I'll do Control Shift F to open my fill panel. With this selected, I'm going to click on this little dropper tool in the fill and then click on the green, and that changed it to the same color green. All right, now we'll trace this guy again, trace bitmap, make it a little bigger. This one, let me zoom in. I don't want to trace, well, I'm going to go ahead and trace everything, but I actually don't want all this detail on the flowers. I just want them to be a simple, solid flower. So I'll show you how to do that. So trace bitmap. Oops, it's hiding over here on the side. Again, it's simple black and white, so I'll update and say OK. I'm going to zoom out a little. This one I think also has some stray nodes. If I double click on it, it's also got a ton of nodes. You might want to simplify something like this. So I'm just going in and selecting all these stray bits and deleting them. Alright, so I can get rid of the original. I'm just pressing delete to delete those. Now here what I want to do is break it apart and then union it together to get it into a sort of a silhouette basically. So I go to path, break apart. See how that got it all? But it's in a little bitty bits, all these little bits. So let me undo, Control Z to put all those pieces back. Now I'm going to select the whole thing and just say path union. That gets it all as one piece. Then I want to change the flowers to a different color, so I'm going to break it apart again. And this time it won't give me all the little pieces because they're gone. So path break apart. And now it just separated the stem and the flowers. I can go through and click, hold down the shift and click to select all of the flowers. And I can change them to a yellow color. And then I can union those together so they're all one piece, path union. And now I want to open the fill panel again, Control Shift F, and I'll use the picker and pick the green to change my stem to the same color green. Not sure it got, yeah. Okay, so there's that. And let's trace the daisy. For the daisy, I'm just going to do just a single scan and then fill in the petals, because this has a gradient and I don't know if it'll trace well or not if I tried to use colors. So trace bitmap, which again is over here hiding on the side. I do that all the time. So let's just try brightness cutoff, and that looks fine. So okay, so there's that. Can delete the original flower. Now I'll go in, if I click off of the flower and pick up the paint bucket, and then I'm just going to give it a pale pink color to fill in the petals. Let me zoom in some. See, when you zoom in, your paint bucket fills better. I don't know why. So I'm going to undo those. See how that fills better? And you want to make sure the whole area you're filling is visible to you on the screen, because sometimes that makes a difference. Okay, then I'll fill the middle, but then I'm going to change that to a yellow also. That's one cool thing about the paint bucket. Let me show you that again. So right now pink is my selected color. So I can, well no, it turned it to yellow because I had just picked yellow. But anyway, if you fill it with a color then, and it's not the color you want a next color, you can just go click and the last thing you filled will turn to the new color. It's just kind of a shortcut. Can save you a lot of time on the paint bucket. So now I'm going to switch back to the selector tool and pick one of the pink petals. I'll right click and go down to select same, fill color, and now I'm going to union those together. So now all my petals are together. Now one other thing, if you look at my original one over here, the daisies, I have a black layer behind those because I'm going to change the petals to white and it wouldn't show up on a white background. So for this one, I need to select the black layer. So now my black layer is selected and it's not filled. I'm going to move it back. So I can just break it apart and union it like I did before. So path, break apart, and then path, union. Now if I drag it, you see that's a solid black background. Okay. And I'll probably go ahead and change these petals to white. Maybe I'll change them to light gray so I can still see them. So the only thing left to trace is the rose. Make that bigger. And this one is the only one of these I'm going to trace in color. So I'm going to go colors. It's got 2 colors, so I want to do 3 scans. I want to remove the background and I don't want to stack the scans. So we'll see how that does. If I ungroup it, Control Shift G, now there's my rose. I can get rid of the original and close bitmap trace. Alright. Now we can assemble our spray of flowers. Okay, let me move the rose to the middle. Make it a little smaller. Then I want 2 daisies, one on top of the flower, one on top of the rose. And I'm going to duplicate, Control D, and I want one behind the rose. So I'm going to press End to send all of that back behind the rose. Okay. Now we can put our flowers in where we want them. And this is just going to be, I mean, you may pick completely different flowers. So I'm going to select this guy and I'm going to rotate it and move it back behind the rose. I press End to get it behind. That sends it to the very bottom. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key and make that a little bigger. And continue rotating it until it looks the way I want it to. rotate. Okay. Now I can put, let's do this guy next. I can put him maybe here. And then I'll duplicate and flip it. That's not what I wanted to do. There, like that. You're basically just flipping things around. You can rotate it a little to make it look a little different. Just whatever you want to do. Alright, now we'll put a couple of these guys in. And for this one, he was too curved for me. So what I did with him was I turned him so he's kind of like this. And then I went to Path Effects. Over here, my Path Effects menu comes up and I click the plus. And I'm clicking Bend. I'm going to bend this path and make it less curved. So now over here on the Path Effects, I click on this little Edit on Canvas tool, and that gives me a line running through my path, and I can click on that line and pull it. I can also move the nodes around and bend it however I want. This sort of rotates as if it was rotating in 3D. You can just put it however you want, play with it. Once you've done a path effect, though, you do have to do object to path to get it back to a path. And then we'll just stick that in here, duplicate, mirror image, move it over to the other side. I might put that coming out behind the daisy. Rotate, rotate, move it back. Alright. I should move all these things to the back so that we can see what it looks like. I'm just pressing end on the keyboard. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think that's pretty. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start offsetting some things. Now if you wanted to layer vinyl, you could do it like this. You would have things layered on top of each other. It just sort of depends on what you want to do. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to union all of the green parts together. So I'll click on the green, I'll right click on it, go down to select same, fill color. That's selected all of my green bits. And I'm just going to go to path, union. Alright, those are all together. Now the next thing I want to do is, I'm trying to decide what the next best thing to do is. Because we have stuff behind the rows, which we don't want to layer, we want to knock all of that stuff behind the rows out. So let's select both pieces of the rows. I've got them both selected now. We're going to duplicate, Control D, and union. Now we got one solid piece that we can use to knock out. And I'm going to actually outset it a little bit by doing Control and the close parentheses. I did 9 outsets at 1 pixel. Okay, so now it's a little bigger. Now we're just going to make duplicates of that and knock out everything that's going to be behind the rows. So first I'm going to duplicate, then let's go ahead and knock out the green. So I've got my duplicate selected and the green. I'm going to do Control Shift minus, which is the same thing as path difference. So now if I move all of my rose pieces out of the way, you can see it knocked out all of the green. And if I just move that out of the way, you can see it left a little border. Let me zoom in because I outset it. So it left a little border. Now you don't have to be so careful about layering. Let me put that back. Okay, now we can use this duplicate. We can make another duplicate. Control C. I'm sorry, not Control C, Control D. Control D. There we go. And now another thing that's behind is the yellow bits from this. So if I select my duplicate offset and the yellow bits and do Control Shift minus or path difference. Now if I move everything out of the way, you can see that it got rid of the yellow bits. And I don't know why I have, see, I knew I would mess something up. I'll have to remember to go back and delete that later. So the only other thing, we want this daisy to be on top, but we want this daisy to be behind, and that's got 3 different color layers, so I'm going to have to knock out each of those different layers. So let me duplicate that again. Make sure I got the right thing. No, see that? I don't know what that's doing. All right. So duplicate. Now I'm going to knock out that yellow. Control Shift minus. Duplicate. We'll knock out the white. Control Shift minus. Duplicate. And then we're going to have to choose the black here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click again. And now I've selected the black. Hold down Shift and select the rose outset and Control Shift minus to knock it out. Now all of these things should be cut. The yellow's cut, the black is cut, and the white layer is cut. Put it all back. And is that everything that's behind the rose? Let's check and see. Yes, it is. Okay, so we should be done with this outset. We can delete that. All right, so now we're going to have to knock out the parts of the rose that are underneath the daisy. So, and when I do that, I also want a little white offset to give me room to layer. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to click this black layer again and duplicate it, the black layer behind the daisy, and then I'm going to outset it 9 times. And on the daisy, on the rose, we're going to have to knock out 2 different colors, the 2 different reds. So duplicate, select one, Control Shift minus. I'm also going to use this to knock out some of the green, so duplicate, and then I'm going to pick this other color red, Control Shift minus. Now let's just pull those out and make sure they cut, and they did. You can see that knocked out and that knocked out. So Control Z a couple times to put it back. And then finally, I think the only other thing under there is bits of green, and those are all union together, so I don't need another duplicate. So select that, select the green, Control Shift minus, and there we go. You can see it's left a little border around. All right. Okay, one last step to go, and that is to get the green and anything that's behind. Let's see what's behind the daisy. There's a little bit of the yellow layer behind the daisy and the green. So Control Z to put all those back. Again, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to first select the black layer by holding down Alt and clicking. Black is selected. Duplicate and outset 9 times. You might use a different number of offsets. That's just what I used for all of my others, and to keep all of my outsets the same, I'm just keeping it at 9. So we're going to have to do 2 different knockouts with the green and with the yellow, so I need to duplicate that once. So that's selected, the green is selected, Control Shift minus. Alright, if I move this green, you should be able to see how it knocked it out. Now I need to knock out the yellow, and I don't need any more of these, so I can just go ahead and use the one I've got. I don't have to make another duplicate. So select the black and the yellow, Control Shift minus. Alright, so now there should be nothing behind the daisy. Let's check. And there's not. Okay. Now, if we're going to put this on, that should be everything for this. I think everything is all knocked out the way it should be. We've got little borders to make it easier to layer. Now we're going to put our initial in. And that's obviously going to have to be a lot bigger. And you can put it, we'll send it to the back by pressing end so you can see how it's going to look. Alright. You just put it wherever you want. Make your letter however big you want. Like so. You can even grab the whole thing, click on it again, and rotate it if you want it, in a different orientation. So whatever you think looks good, that's fine. Now what we want to do is we want to make an offset behind the whole thing so that we can knock out the parts of the A so that we're not layering our flowers on top of vinyl on the A. That's actually pretty easy. So, whoops. I want to click and drag and select all of this stuff. And I can select everything but the A if I just don't include all of the A in my bounding box there. So now just the flower spray is selected. I'm going to duplicate it, Control D, and then I'm going to union it all together, Path Union. Alright, so there's that. Now, I'm going to send that to the back by pressing End, and then I'm going to do Page Up just to put it on top of the A. End sends something all the way to the back. Home sends it all the way to the front. Page Up and Down send it one Z layer at a time, or one part of the Z stack. So I'm going to zoom in a little. And now I'm going to do an offset on that green layer that is still selected. So Control and the close parentheses. There it goes. It was just taking it a little while. Okay, we can change the color of that. Say change it to white and give it a black border. And so that way you can easily see how that's going to look against your letter. Okay, so there's that. Now that's where I stopped on mine because I wanted people to be able to change the letter out. But if you were going to go ahead and slice your letter, you would just go in and select that white layer. And I'm going to use the Alt key because I'm not able to grab it. So now that the white offset is selected, and you also select your initial and just do, because that white is on top of the letter, you can just do path difference, and that slices, you can see it sliced out of the A. Alright, now here at this point, or let me go back actually. Well, there were some things that we're probably going to need to clean up. If I drag the green out here, you can probably see. Yeah, let me zoom in. You can see there's these little bitty bits where it cut. If I double click on it, I get the nodes, and I can just drag over these and delete them. They're not really important. They probably wouldn't cause too much of a problem. They just wouldn't, you wouldn't cut them well, or they wouldn't weed well, so you would just ignore them. But to have a nice clean file, you'd want to get rid of those. Okay, I can't tell if that's something on my screen. Let me zoom in here. Okay, that looks fine. Now, this is really rough. I probably should have smoothed that out some. But, and then we can just go put it back where it was. And then you'd want to go through and check all of the layers to make sure, all of the different colors, to make sure that there's not little tiny bits. And then you can also check your black layer for that too, because I see right now, if I zoom in, there's a tiny little bit of the black right here. If I double click on the A, you can see, I mean, that's probably not going to cut, so you might as well just go ahead and get rid of it. And you can, you can be as picky about this as you want, like that right there. No, and this right here. So it's not going to make a big difference. It's not going to look super weird on your letter. So there you go. And you could do, I mean, any combination of flowers that you want. You just want to make sure that you pick something that's going to be easily traceable, or that you can modify in a way that's going to, be traceable and work well with this sort of design. Another thing you could do on here, if you wanted to layer, so right now the letter is separate from the black daisies. So if you right click on the A and say select same fill color, it'll also select the daisies, and we can union those together. And that way, like if you were putting this in HTV, you could just cut those two together and not have to worry about placement later. So versatile, you could do pretty much anything you wanted as far as flowers and initials. You could do a name, you could do something for Mother's Day. And you could do something much simpler than this if you were only to have one flower and like a couple of little green stems. That would be much easier and much less um, time consuming to create. So, all right, well, I hope that this was understandable and I hope somebody can use it to make a pretty monogram. Thanks for watching.